Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 9. Now, as we should all know by now, or hopefully you would, it appears that Cobalt Blue will be a threat in the final season, or could be a threat. Well, I'll say will, because it most likely is going to be the fact, but will be a threat in the final season of The Flash, if not the final villain of the show. And we are placing them being the final villain just due to the fact that we know that Red Death was a part of the earlier stage of the season, and it feels like, or it just seems like they've finished filming that storyline, though it is yet to be 100%, officially confirmed whether Cobalt Blue is in the final season, let alone them being the actual final villain of the show and the season. But one other villain that has been brought up when the possibility of Cobalt Blue being introduced on the show has been brought up is that of Savitar, who of course was the main villain from season 3. And it's because of the Savitar storyline in season 3 that the Flash may have to make some changes to Cobalt Blue's story in order to just like differentiate what goes down. Now, the cliffhanger or stinger or just post-credit scene, whatever you want to call it, from the Flash Season 8's finale left really no guessing as to who would be coming our way in Season 9, with the appearance and reveal of that mysterious glowing blue crystal, like almost looked like it was like fire around it or something, that was in the future year of 2049. That was, clearly meant to be the talisman that will give whoever is the show's interpretation of Cobalt Blue their power set. Now, we have no real clue as to how the show is going to adapt the comics version of Cobalt Blue. That's still unclear, but it's unlikely to be in line with what we've seen from the comics. And that's because the show has already sort of used the base elements, at the very least, of that story when it put your boy, Barry Allen, against the deadly speedster of Savitar back in Season 3. Now, stating the obvious, but Cobalt Blue is not a time remnant in the comic. I mean, it's not even Barry Allen, but he does share the same sort of like envy and jealousy driven anger that Savitar held towards Barry back in season 3. In the comic books, Cobalt Blue is Malcolm Thawne, the secret and long lost brother of Barry Allen, and also a character with a vendetta of sorts against our favorite Scarlet Speedster, or the Scarlet Speedster. Now, as we have gone over in the past, Malcolm Thawne was separated at birth from Barry when a doctor sort of, tried to avoid giving a set of parents the bad news that their child was stillborn. So Barry went home with Henry and Nora, like he should have, and I guess like Malcolm should have as well. But Malcolm went home with the Thawnes, where he just endured a horrid childhood. That's just the best way to put it, just in the most simple way to put it, just a horrid childhood, which was only made worse when he learnt of Barry and discovered the wonderful life that Barry was living and that Malcolm could and should have been living. Now, a chance to strike at Barry came when he discovered his adoptive parents' connection to a blue talisman that was through their family that just thrives and builds and powers itself off negative emotions, which Malcolm was full of at the time. Now, with this knowledge, Malcolm does transform into Cobalt Blue by allowing this hatred to fuel and build up the talisman, and then this pretty much kicked off his journey and revenge tour against Barry Allen. Now, although this differs from the origin given to Savitar in the Flash Season 3, as I said, the base elements are still the same for the most part. Now, within the Arrowverse, Savitar was essentially just a copy of Barry. As a time remnant who just resented the neglect that he received from Team Flash following after he wasn't needed anymore. He was the spare copy, so he wasn't needed anymore, which was allowed, that anger was just allowed to fester and boil over many years to the point in which he went about what he did. Now, the jealousy that festered within him is similar to the emotions that did drive Malcolm, or Cobalt Blue, to being a villain in the comics. Now, featuring a storyline based around a hateful, previously unseen or even slightly hinted at twin brother of Barry, that would have the show just handing us a very unnecessary retread of Season 3's story, and it'd also be the height of soap opera on TV. I mean, comic books and their films and TV are sort of soap operas by design, just because you have stuff that's just so unbelievable and just done for dramatic purpose, like a long lost brother coming in and stuff like that. But sometimes there is a line when it comes to the live action stuff, and I think this would be crossing it, in my opinion at least. The comics get away with much more than a live action TV or movie would. And though the comic could get away with it, I think the TV show would be crossing the line, in my opinion at least. Now, a comic book accurate take on Cobalt Blue would not only feel too similar to Savitar, but also it's using the not overly creative long lost family member, which we were talking about before, like let alone the twin brother trope. Like that's long. That's not really that creative anymore as well. And using that as like the base of the Flash's potential final story ever doesn't really feel like the best way to go about things. And one of the main reasons for that is that the show has the perfect option for Cobalt Blue sitting there, just waiting, which I think every man and their dog that watches the show is crying out for. And that is the long theorized discussion that the Arrowverse's Cobalt Blue should be none other than Eddie Thawne. Now, there are a few reasons as to why Eddie works within this storyline, but the main one is that he's not a descendant, he's an ancestor of Reverse Flash, just like Malcolm. They're pretty much just interchangeable characters. I'm surprised they didn't call Eddie Malcolm. I mean, it probably would have worked if they wanted to plant a seed for Cobalt Blue in the future and him coming back. But they're both ancestors of Reverse Flash. It works. Now, obviously, there is the elephant in the room with the fact that Eddie is dead. Now, as for how bringing back Eddie for Cobalt Blue could work, it is possible that a version of Eddie Thawne from a different timeline grows to hate Barry for marrying Iris and decides to get revenge, but maybe his Barry's dead or whatever it might be, but he wants to get some revenge and our Barry's the one that gets it. But this is where there could be issues, which we have brought up previously in other videos when slightly discussing or deeply discussing this, is that will it be impactful if it is not the Eddie that we were with in season 1 that went through that journey and ended the way that he did? If it's another timeline to Eddie Thawne or another Earth's Eddie Thawne potentially, does it impact the story and show as much? And I think the answer to that is, if he went through similar events and there is still like an attachment for characters like Iris and Barry on the show when he does rock up, then I don't think it matters too much if it's not the Eddie from season 1 that is like reborn in some weird way, whatever that might be. But I think the option people would prefer is that it is the one that went through those events from season 1 and is reborn in some way. He went into the weird thing, the weird wormhole thing. What did that do to him? I mean, we saw Ronnie return. I know it was Deathstorm, but it was that whole storyline there that goes back to season 1. So why not do it again with Eddie? However, one thing to bring up, like the opening discussion of this video that sort of led into this part talks about, we can't have a Savitar repeat even if we avoid the twin brother stuff. Like Cobalt Blue just can't be out there to kill Iris because then you're just doing the Savitar thing again. And I don't think that would make too much sense either. But like comics in a way, I think just him trying to make Barry, or just like the story in the comics, might I say, did in a way, I think it's just Malcolm or Eddie in this case, or Cobalt Blue, trying to make Barry and maybe Iris's life just a living hell by impacting them in other ways. That could be the way to go about it. Because it's important to remember in the comics, when Cobalt Blue comes around, Barry's actually like dead. He's died in crisis by that point. So Wally's the Flash. So he's going around and messing with the loved ones of Barry. But in the show, Barry would obviously still be alive. So he would get to experience like Barry's anguish in like people that he loves being maybe not killed. That might be a bit too far early on at the very least, but just messed with. And there's like a plethora of characters that Cobalt Blue could go around and mess with, especially if it's Eddie, because he would know some of these characters as well, which would spice it up a bit more. He's not anonymous to any of these people. He's well known to at least a decent amount of them. Now, one other issue that comes around if they do the Cobalt Blue storyline is just what that end credit scene was. And people are still confused about it, and I'm exactly not sure which way they're going to go about it because how it was set up to show us that blue crystal in the future. But of course, it's set up in the season 8 finale with Barry and Iris talking about who the next avatar of the negative Speed Force is going to be. And then it shows us that blue crystal. Eric Wallace, the showrunner, has said, oh, if for anyone that's read the comics, they know who that's teasing. No one is offering anything up with decent enough support outside of Cobalt Blue. But is Cobalt Blue meant to be the next negative Speed Force avatar, whoever is holding it, whether it's Eddie Thawne, whether it's Cecile, I don't know, whoever it is? Is that what they're setting up? Because Cobalt Blue's powers, he can be a speed star, but his natural ability is that he sort of takes abilities. That's what his talisman allows him to do. So that's the thing that I'm very curious about. Are they going to make him a straight up speed star? Or is it something that builds into him being the negative Speed Force avatar? It's not what he's given straight away. He builds into that from using the talisman. That's the thing that I'm not too sure about. I don't think anyone's really sure about at the moment just because of how that final scene was set up. So that's something that I'm very curious about heading into the final season if Cobalt Blue is the villain. I need to stress that because it still hasn't been confirmed, which is a bit frustrating because no one's really offered up another option outside of like Savitar returning or something like that. So fingers crossed it makes sense. Fingers crossed. And also they have a limited amount of episodes, which Makes me need to cross my fingers now. Maybe I'm crossing my toes now, just to make sure it works out well. But yeah, guys, that's all to go over in this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like in the video to show support for the video and just help it out. Let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on it. Do you have any concerns with the Cobalt Blue thing, especially around the negative speed force stuff, or even like potentially any similarities to Savitar if they don't change up the storyline in some way? Let me know your thoughts down there. And if you'd add anything to it as well. Curious to hear what you guys might have to say about that. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.